thought it'd be a lot of fun to take an opportunity and have an informal discussion on the meaning of Psalm 82, one of the great biblical texts that refer to the divine council of deities in the Hebrew Bible. Now, Psalm 82, verse 1, begins in Hebrew with a reference to God standing in the divine council. The term God there is Elohim, which can mean God as a proper noun, or it can refer to gods in the plural, depending on context. Now, some biblical scholars, myself included, believe that Elohim is a textual insertion, that originally this text would have referred to Yahweh standing in the council, and the council here is referred to as an Edah of El, a divine council, a heavenly council, the council of God. And then at the end of the verse, we're told that this deity, whether Yahweh or Elohim, judges among the Elohim, judges among the gods. Now, many later religious traditions that have viewed the Bible as canonical, as authoritative, who have desired to see radical monotheism in the book that simply does not appear, have suggested that the Elohim here and in other locations does not need refer to gods, as in divine celestial entities, but rather Elohim can refer to judges in Israel. In fact, the great Brown Driver and Briggs Hebrew and English lexicon of the Old Testament, although dated, still extremely valuable. Nonetheless, under the entry that we have for Elohim, the first entry states that this Hebrew word can refer to judges. Well, can it? Can it refer to judges? Was that the original intent? No, absolutely not. The tradition of reinterpreting Elohim as judges ultimately derives from Rabbinic Judaism. So if we turn our attention to early Jewish interpretations of Psalm 82, the historic tradition of reinterpreting Elohim to identify judges, really it's quite traceable. Drawing attention then to two rabbinic schools of thought. Shortly after the time of Christ, we can see that Psalm 82 was reinterpreted in early Judaism to refer to a collection of human judges, or even Israel as a whole, with this reference to Elohim. Now, for those unfamiliar with the history of rabbinic thought, there exists a sequence of rabbinic scholars, and we're going to draw upon two of these. The Jewish school, known as the Tanaim, which derives from an Aramaic root Tanah, were a group of rabbinic sages whose views were recorded in the Mishnah from approximately 70 to 200 CE, basically a 130-year time period. Now, their name derives, again, from the Aramaic root Tanah, which is equivalent to the Hebrew root Shana, the very root for the Mishnah, which, for those not familiar with the Mishnah, it is a collection of Jewish legal debates between 70 to 200 AD. So this group of Jewish scholars was then followed in rabbinic tradition by the Amoraim, an Aramaic expression meaning those who say or those who tell over, something along those lines. And they operated from approximately 200 to 500 CE in and around Babylonia and the land of Israel. So, quoting now from Mechilta de Rabbi Ishmael. Okay, and the Mechilta is rabbinic commentary in the book of Exodus. So we read from Rabbi Ishmael, quote, "From here they said, every 10 men that enter the synagogue, the Shekinah, or the presence of deity, is with them. As it says, God stands in the divine assembly." Now quoting Psalm 82:1. "And from whence does it say, with every 3 that are judging?" The question is asked. The answer, "In the midst of gods he judges." Psalm 82:1, again, is the reference there. And so now we turn to Mechilta de Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. We read, "From whence does it say that when 3 are sitting and studying Torah, the Shekinah dwells with them?" Well, God stands in the divine assembly. Again, referring to Psalm 82, a reinterpretation. So from these two rabbinic texts, we encounter a tradition interpreting the reference to Elohim as, or gods, in Psalm 82:1 as either judges or those sitting and studying Torah, the law of God. Now, really, we find a similar interpretation in the Sifrei Devarim, which is early rabbinic commentary in the book of Deuteronomy. So 306, we read, both the soul and body of creatures created from heaven are from heaven. Okay, so in other words, the text is referring to angels and God, those beings associated with the heavenly realm. The soul and their body were created in the heaven. Both the soul and body of creatures created from earth are from earth, except for man, whose soul is from heaven and body is from earth. Interesting view regarding a pre-mortal human existence of the soul. So we continuing on then. Sifrei Devarim. Therefore, if a man fulfills Torah and the desire of his Father in heaven, he is like the heavenly creatures, as it says, and then, quote from Psalm 82:1, Psalm 82:6. I said, you are gods and sons of the Most High, all of you. So here, fascinating. And a reinterpretation of the psalm to refer to human beings as gods. And in this case, not judges specifically, but rather those who do the will of the Father in heaven, those who study Torah, the law. And this text is fascinating, not only for the various issues that we've just explored, but I guess from a historic perspective, because of the thematic link that it creates between rabbinic traditions. So if we turn, for example, to the Targum or Aramaic revision of Psalm 82, we read this, okay? So I'm going to give you my translation of the Targum from the Aramaic, verse 1, a psalm of Asaph. As for God, his Shekinah dwells in the assembly of the righteous who are mighty in the law. He judges among the judges of truth. How long, O you wicked, will you judge falsely and show partiality to the wicked? Forever? And then it continues on. Very similar, I guess, to the Hebrew for the most part. And so, with this Targum, this Aramaic revision of Psalm 82, which places God dwelling only with truthful judges, we see an intermediate stage in the development of this rabbinic tradition, which begins with a rereading of Psalm 82 that describes the presence of deity among the judges and then develops into an expression concerning God dwelling with all Israel on account of truthful judges. So, question now, where is the justification, right? What was it that allowed early rabbinic commentators to interpret the Hebrew word Elohim, or gods, as human judges? This is very significant because this early Jewish tradition is going to influence not only scholarly works like the later Brown, Driver, and Briggs Hebrew and English lexicon, but it's also going to affect the way that radical monotheists in later Jewish and Christian traditions will approach text in the Hebrew Bible that refer to a plurality of deities, a plurality of gods.